My name is Sarah Joy Roberts, and I'm making another video to show you some medicinal plants that could be in your backyard. I live in the Northeast, and what you're looking at is my beautiful elderflowers. Elderflower is said to open on the summer solstice. And sure enough, there were all these buds the night before, and the morning of the summer solstice I walked down and they were just starting to open. And this right here is the perfect stage for picking to dry the elderflower. And what I'll do is I'll just cut it right there, and then I'll put it upside down in a basket and put it in a cool, dry space until it's dried enough that I can then put it in a glass jar without it molding. So what I like is that you can actually see the dust coming out of the flower, and that is actually the pollen. To me, that's the perfect stage. But some people will wait until they are a little bit more gone and forming berries, and then they'll flip it upside down and let the flowers fall off, and they'll just collect the flowers and dry them. But I think it's more potent to pick it in full bloom. And as you can see, I have got plenty of flowers, so I'll have plenty of berries even if I pick more flowers than I could possibly use in a year. So elder is considered a shrub and not a tree, even though these are pretty big. These have gotten really big because they really like where they are. Elder likes to live near water, and if you dig about 3 feet down, it will be water. I've got a lot of water on my property, which is one of the reasons I chose it. I don't have to worry about my well going dry. So elder was first used in medieval times for perfume. It was the first eau de toilette. And what they did is they made a hydrosol out of the flowers. It's actually quite potent here. The smell is magnificent. It smells very perfumey. Now we think of elderberries as being antiviral, and in fact the flowers are even stronger. But elderberries make a very nice syrup that's very easy to give to children, and it also induces sweating to reduce fever. But the flowers I also use for skin problems, very good for skin dermatitis, eczema, and psoriasis. And I also put it in shampoo for your hair, as well as elder leaves. Elder leaves are very good for the hair, and they also make good bug deterrent. So I also use them as a form of bug spray. So I'll pick the leaves just before it starts to flower, and then I'll pick the flowers at about this stage. And then when I'm picking the berries, if you're going to use the berries for medicine, you want to pick them before they turn purple. They want to be slightly red. It makes them a more potent for antiviral purposes. So you want your elderberry syrup to look very deep red and not too purple. In folklore, elder is said to bring fairies. So what they would do is make a tea with elderflower and then add a whole bunch of honey and then spray it in an area where they want fairies to come. And one more thing that elderflower is very good for is eye infections. So my dog actually got an eye infection a couple weeks ago. I made a tea with elderflower. I added a couple of flowers of chamomile, a couple of flowers of calendula, which is also antimicrobial and antiviral, and a little bit of red clover for its blood cleansing properties. And then I used a dropper and I just put some of that potent tea in the dog's eye, and by the third dose the dog basically came up to me and opened its eye for me. And after 24 hours you could definitely tell she was getting better, and after 2 days it was all cleared up. So you can use elder tea as an eye rinse for eye infections. So what I just showed you was the elder that I planted, but you can see right here are some wild elder. And what I do is I'll use the ones that I planted to make the syrups, and I'll use the wild elder to make tinctures. The berries are just a little smaller. So here, this yellow flower is some wild St. John's wort, and St. John's wort starts to bloom on the day of St. John, which is June 24th. And St. John's wort has many uses. Internally, it can be an anti-inflammatory. I use it with lobelia for kids' asthma, and it also is a mild antidepressant. So what St. John's wort actually does in the body is it causes photosensitivity of the skin. So it's really only useful for winter depression, and really shouldn't be taken during the summer because it will increase your risk of sunburn. One of the biggest uses of St. John's wort is actually externally as an anti-inflammatory and for healing wounds. And what you do is you pick the flowers when they are at this perfect blooming stage. This flower right here is perfect, but you can also pick the buds. But as soon as it starts to dry up and look old, like even this one, but definitely this one, it's really too late to pick it. So you pick the flowers and you put them in oil. Olive oil, I will use olive oil and sesame oil if I'm using it for sunblock, but just olive oil if I'm using it for wound healing or even for nerve pain. I've used St. John's wort oil for neuromas in the feet. And what will happen is the oil will turn red. So here's a jar of St. John's wort oil from last year. And you can see that it's like this red color. So as you're picking St. John's wort, and this is how I actually pick it, is like to just get the flower itself, and then I'll put it in a jar and I'll pick the buds, and you can see there's like my finger has turned a little red just from only picking 2. So the oil of the plant is actually red. This here is yarrow, very common herb that can be found in the Northeast with these feathery leaves. Yarrow stops bleeding and also clears heat, induces sweating, and lowers fevers. So if you are ever out in the woods and you have an injury that's bleeding, what you can do is use the leaves, just crush them up and put them on the wound, and they stop bleeding. And that's why the scientific name is Achilles millifolia. Right? Achilles is a warrior. Millifolia just means these like tiny little leaves, or that the leaves are segregated. And the flowers will be white, and they will kind of look like Queen Anne's lace, these big white umbels. But the flowers actually look more delicate. I'm sure that I'll be able to find some to show you. So it's a really good idea to dry some of the leaves because it's a lot easier to crush them up if somebody has an injury, but it can be used fresh. And if you remember from my last video, this is an herb that I use in the blood moon tea for dysmenorrhea, overbleeding, clots. One of my favorite herbs. My very first goat I named Yarrow. I love the way that this herb smells. When you're using it in tea form, you do use the flowers as well as the leaves. And same thing for making salves. So just like with the St. John's wort, you pick it, you cut it up, and you put it in oil, and then you can make a salve with the oil. And this is definitely really good for cuts, wounds, scrapes. This is calendula, and this I started from seed. And calendula will reseed itself, but it's an annual. You can't just hope that it comes up the next year. If you get plants the next year, they'll be from dropped seeds. And calendula I use mainly in oils and bath teas. Very, very good for eczema, psoriasis, but also antimicrobial. Some people do use it internally, but I tend to use more of the elder or Chinese patent formulas for sinus infections and stuff. I've never used calendula for a cold or a viral infection or a bacterial infection. Although I do think that it helps with bacteria on the skin that isn't supposed to be there. Most of the bacteria on our skin is actually helping us defend ourselves. And the way that you pick calendula is you just pick the flower itself, and it takes a little bit to dry. So you want to make sure that you don't package it up before it's completely dry, or it will mold. And the more you pick the flowers, the more flowers the plant will grow. This here is comfrey. Comfrey root is used in chest salves. Helps break up phlegm in the chest. But mostly comfrey is used to very quickly heal skin. And what you use are, you can use the flowers and the leaves. What I like to do is to pick it when it very first starts to flower, because that's when the whole plant is at its most potent. And I would never use a leaf like this one with a hole in it. I always make sure there's no insects on anything before I dry them. Comfrey can also be used, you can cut down a whole bunch of comfrey, make a tea out of it, and feed your plants. It is so rich in nutrients, you can basically use it instead of Miracle-Gro. Or you can just lay it down. I've done that, just cut a whole bunch of stalks and lay it down in the garden instead of grass. So it keeps weeds from coming up, and at the same time, it's adding nutrients to your soil. So comfrey is most known to heal skin. So it speeds up the growth of new skin cells. So I have one salve with comfrey and calendula in it, and then I add a little tea tree just to kill any staph or MRSA that could be on the skin. Because this heals it up so quickly, you want to make sure it's a clean cut. And I will also use that salve on dry, itchy skin in infants and young children, eczema, psoriasis, and the like. So if you had a cut and you weren't sure you had all the dirt out of it, you would not want to use comfrey, because you could be causing the skin to heal over dirt, and that wouldn't be good. So here is a whole bunch more yarrow, and here you can see the flowers better. And you can see that it's an umbel, but the center is kind of yellowish, and that's, I mean, the leaves are completely different from Queen Anne's lace, but this is just to make, you can make sure that you really have yarrow before you pick it. This is water hemlock. This is not used as an herb. This is actually poisonous. So it's a good one to know. Do not use this. So you see again, it's got flowers in the shape of umbels, which basically means they look like little umbrellas. But the leaves are completely different. They actually look like elder leaves. And these like water and they grow to be pretty tall. This is water hemlock, so should not be used at all. Stay away. And this is what I came down here to find, is this equisetum or horsetail. It's right here, and this one is perfect for picking. It hasn't gotten too old. Right here is another one. And the equisetum you usually see by water, but you can see here the stream's all dried up and there's still a lot of equisetum. So I want to just pick one to show you what it looks like. So here, where it's not quite so light green, this is a little old, so I might not pick that. I try and pick stuff before it gets too old. And the main thing in horsetail or equisetum is it's really high in silica. So this I use in a joint relief balm because the silica helps rebuild the joint, and I also use it in hair shampoo and hair rinse for rebuilding hair, because hair is made out of silica. So you can use this in tea form just as a way to get more silica in your body. But I like to just eat a lot of celery because I love celery. So here you can see all this equisetum growing in between these rocks. And then right here you can see how tall it can get. And they don't have a normal flower. They have like a stalk, and it's always in the spring. And here's a really perfect one for picking. You can see how much lighter green it is. So it's not quite so old and dried out as these giant ones behind it. Thank you for watching my video about some more backyard herbs. That was my second video about herbs. Please hit the subscribe and like, as this is a new channel and I'm just starting to get it going. Thank you and have a great day.